Grant, Mike. I have 5. You as well, Patrick?
Yes.
Okay. Well, why don't we go ahead and call the Transportation Commission meeting to order for September 16th, 2020. Jesse, if you'd go ahead and please read our standard instructions.
Here we go. All right, welcome to our virtual meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you've entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will let you know when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share a documentation with the board, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jesse. Patrick, would you call the roll, please?
All right. Chris McCahill.
Here.
Okay. Ann Kovich.
Here.
Jessica Piat. Not. Bill Bremer.
Here.
Okay. Ken Strite has said he would not be here. Bridget Brown. I see.
Present.
Yep. And okay. Then Grant Foster.
Here.
Mike Tierney.
Here.
And Harold Cleams.
Here.
Okay.
Okay, so Jesse, we're going to allow people to control their own mics, correct?
Yep, that's how it's set up right now.
Yep, great. Okay. So Patrick had distributed updated minutes. So those would be the minutes that we would have under consideration. Did everybody have an opportunity to review them? And if so, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for approval of the minutes.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a second. Any discussion? Okay, we're going to assume unanimous consent vote in favor of approval of the minutes. If you disagree with that, please raise your hand. Or if you'd like a roll call vote, please raise your hand. Okay, no hands raised, so the motion passed. Patrick, do we have any public comment? Or Jesse, do we have any public comment on items not on the agenda?
We do not.
Okay. Any disclosures and recusals this evening? So raise your hand. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Okay, commission business. We spoke last time. Yang announced that Justin would be taking over as executive secretary of the Transportation Commission after this meeting, after tonight's meeting. And because there was extra effort and extra work, and as Grant pointed out and others pointed out at the last meeting, we really appreciate everything that Yang has done as our first executive secretary of the Transportation Commission. So I drafted a resolution TC resolution number 56, which I'd like to read into the record, and then I would ask for a motion when I'm done to approve it, and certainly ask for any other additional comments from people. So this resolution is commending Yang Tao for his excellent guidance and leadership as the inaugural executive secretary for the Transportation Commission. Whereas the Transportation Commission was created pursuant to MGO Section 33.56 and began meeting in July of 2018, and whereas pursuant to MGO Section 33.56.4, The Director of Transportation designated Yang Tao, City Traffic Engineer, as the inaugural Executive Secretary of the TC. And whereas Yang was exceptionally good at listening to the questions and concerns of the very active and inquisitive TC members, and whereas Yang was very responsive in providing support and facilitating collection and presentation of additional information in reply to inquiries from TC members, and whereas Yang invested a great deal of time and effort in drafting the initial annual work plan for the Transportation Commission, which provides a critical organizational tool for the Commission. And whereas Yang was a valued member of the team, which created and implemented such essential training tools as the TC Handbook and the TC website, which have been used and appreciated by both existing and new TC members. And whereas Yang worked with the Madison Police Department to significantly enhance the quarterly traffic safety reports as requested by TC members, and whereas Yang contributed so much to the TC over the course of the past 2 years, helping facilitate more efficient and effective meetings. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Transportation Commission expresses its deep gratitude to Yang Tao for his excellent guidance and leadership as the inaugural Executive Secretary of the Transportation Commission. Approved the 16th day of September 2020 by the City of Madison Transportation Commission. So discussion, comments?
I'd move approval.
I think Grant's hand was up first, but you can go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, did you want the motion first or comments first?
We could do a motion first and then discussion. That'd be fine.
Okay. Well, it sounds like Bridget moved it. I'd be happy to second it.
Okay, so there's a motion by Bridget and a second by Grant. Did you want to go ahead with comments? And unless Bridget, you had any additional comments?
No, well done on the resolution, though.
Thank you so much. Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Chair Kovich, for preparing that. And yeah, I just wanted to add and say thank you to Yang. It was, I liked your comments of the inquisitive and active group. This is obviously one of the most active boards, committees, and commissions at the city. We've had extraordinarily long meetings, and it's been, I think, especially challenging through COVID and having to really make a lot of changes, meeting virtually, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I know there's a ton to do in the traffic engineering division without us. And so taking all of this on in addition, I know it's on top of an already really heavy workload. So thanks, Yang, for all your support, and we will definitely miss you.
Yeah. But you're going to stick around to help us with traffic engineering stuff, right, Yang?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I want to thank, the commission for the resolution. I really appreciate the support from every commission member. We did all those things all together. I didn't do those things alone. We did all together, the commission members and staff, especially, the commission chair, Kovich. She spent a lot of time, we spent a lot of time working together on, many of those things. So it has really been a pleasure, working with all of you. I'll be very short. So, I think together we made a lot of progress. Yeah. And I really believe that this commission really brought a lot of value to the city and to the operations of all the DOT divisions. From traffic engineering, I definitely appreciate the the guidance. For example, just one example, like our relationship with the police department. I think because the pushes and suggestions from all of you, I think we made a lot of stride on that. I think we have never been performing together at this level before. So I think I'm really glad to see that, because that that's really important for both departments, but also very important for general public. Basically, we are here to serve them. We want to do a good job for them. So I think that's commission brought a lot of positive changes to the city and to the operations of the duty divisions. So and I'm sure that will continue, and also I'm sure that you will be in good hands of Justin. So I'm confident on that, but I'm still here. I'm still around. So I'll still be involved with agenda meetings, and please feel free to reach out to me if I can be of any assistance in the future. So thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Anybody have any other comments? I would say that I've been involved in city boards, committees, and commissions for over 30 years, and I don't believe I've ever been involved in one that's been this active, and that's gratifying because it's really hard I've been involved in some where nobody ever says anything, and you can tell they never read the material, they don't ask any questions, and that's disheartening. So I think it's really a sign of an excellent group of people who've been appointed to the commission. So is there any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll assume that we have a unanimous consent vote in favor of adopting the resolution unless anybody raises their hand. Okay, I don't see any hands raised, so unanimous consent. And thank you again, Yang, very much. We had 3 items proposed for the consent agenda, items 3, 4, and 5. Legistar number 61665, 61666, and 61908. Patrick, Jesse, did we have any members from the public register to speak on any of these items?
No, we did not.
No, okay. Any members of the commission wish to have any of these items separated out from the consent agenda, Grant?
Yeah, number 5, I would like to separate. Thank you.
I'm sorry, number 5?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Okay, so I have items number 3, 61665, and number 4, 61666 proposed for the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Anybody? Harold?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Harold. Is there a second? Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mike, thank you. Bill, did you have a comment or?
I was the second.
Okay, so we have a third. All right. Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, we'll assume unanimous consent, approval of the consent agenda unless anybody wishes to object. If so, raise your hand. Okay, no hands raised, so the consent agenda is approved. All right, so we will move on then to item 5, which is the roadway geometry for West Wilson. Is that Chris and Jim Wolf?
Yeah, I'll take it, I think. Is it all right if I share my screen?
You bet, go ahead.
Great. All right. So at the previous meeting in August, we had presented this as an informational item. I'll do another quick overview of the project. So the limits here are on Broome Street between John Nolan Drive and West Main Street. And on Wilson Street, at least for the reconstruction project, limits are from Broome Street at the intersection here to the intersection of Hamilton and Henry. And there would be some remarking of the 400 block of West Wilson Street to accommodate some of the proposed changes at the intersection of Broome and Wilson. So kind of a quick overview. The design here is based on the recently adopted corridor study for Wilson Street. On Broome Street, it includes narrowing the travel lanes on this block between John Nolan Drive and Wilson in order to widen the sidewalk to at least 10 feet wide on this easterly side to be used as a shared use path. As it approaches the intersection with Wilson Street, the path or a cycle track would kind of separate off from the sidewalk and would be narrowed to save this existing tree. Minimum width here would be 8.5 feet wide on the path. And then the existing sidewalk could continue up Wilson Street. And the two-way cycle track would continue up Wilson Street, off street at sidewalk level, but separated from the sidewalk with the existing tree terrace. And as we approach the intersection of Henry and Hamilton, the street on Wilson Street would widen out to provide the two travel lanes in the inbound direction. And then the cycle track would bump up to be against the sidewalk with about 1.5 foot buffer in between. So this would involve a travel lane reduction on West Wilson Street. Currently, there are 2 inbound lanes for the entire block that we would reduce this to just a single inbound lane, at least until about 2/3 of the block as we get to Hamilton. Lane configuration change at Broome and Wilson. Currently, the 2 inbound lanes, the rightmost lane can continue through or make the right onto Wilson. We would make the change to a right turn only lane, which was tested by our traffic engineering division back in May of 2019. And then continuing up Broome Street, we would also reduce the lanes on Broome Street between Doty and Wilson. So this would allow for a 10-foot wide two-way cycle track at sidewalk level to be installed on that block as well. And as we approach the intersection with Doty and Main, I'll zoom in here quick, kind of per the input at the previous meeting. We were able to provide a little bit of space for a small bump out at Doty Street, just to help get pedestrians and cyclists out in front of the stop bar for good visibility for any right turning vehicles. I think there was some discussion at the previous meeting about truck turning at the intersection. I did reach out to Capitol Lakes, and it sounds like they have 3 large deliveries per week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So there is some truck use at this intersection, but it's pretty limited. The cycle track then, as it crosses Doty Street, will move to On Street, be 9 feet wide in between the floating bus boarding island and the edge of the gutter. So it'd be 11 feet wide to the face of curb. And we would narrow the cycle track to 8 feet as it crosses the pedestrian crossing from the sidewalk onto the bus boarding island here. And then it widen out to 10 feet wide as it continues up to connect into West Main Street. And then in terms of the 400 block of Wilson Street, the channelized right turn lane would get kind of reconfigured a little bit so that we could provide at least a 12-foot wide shared use space on the sidewalk here. And then we would remark the 400 block of Wilson Street. Currently, South Bassett has 2 travel lanes as it approaches the 400 block. So we have some extra width to work with here. We could remark it to maintain those 2 travel lanes. This was erroneously noted as a travel lane that's an 8-foot parking lane, but also mark a buffered bike lane on the street here. And then back at the intersection, the crossings of the channelized right turn lane would get raised for the ped and bike crossings at those locations. Just kind of a quick note on the 400 block. Per the corridor plan, the ultimate plan on the 400 block would be to reduce this to a single travel lane, maintain the parking lane on the northerly side, and then we could mark the 10-foot two-way cycle track on the south side with a buffer on the street. So all of the curb work at the intersection with the shared use path and everything will be set up for this ultimate condition. It'd just be a matter of redoing some of the markings in the future whenever the Bassett corridor plan and the reconfiguration of the Bassett and Wilson intersection will get completed. I think that's what I have in terms of a presentation on the geometrics.
Okay, are there questions or comments for Jim? Grant? And then Bridget.
Thank you. Yeah, no questions. Just wanted to say thanks again for all the great design work on here. I'm glad that we waited for the corridor study to be complete, and I think we've got a really, really great design here. And also thank you for working on that intersection, getting that little bit of an improvement there with the bump out, and also really looking forward to implementing the Bassett corridor to be able to continue the cycle track through that 400 block. So I think this is a really, really exciting project, and it's really going to be a huge improvement to bike access in the downtown area. So thanks for all your work on it.
Thank you. Oh,
Bridget?
one other thing that I thought of, I'm sorry, can I interject just another thought?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Another part of the discussion was at the Doty intersection. I did check in with Gretchen, and we would be able to provide a leading pedestrian signal here for the bike and pedestrian crossing. I noted that on the plan, but didn't specifically mention it as I was going over it.
Thank you, Jim. Bridget, go ahead.
Yeah, Jim, I'm wondering, well, first, thanks for the presentation. I'm wondering about the signing plan, when that might be available.
Typically, that is done internally by traffic engineering staff, and is usually available a little bit closer to the end of the construction project because it isn't part of the bidding documents.
So I guess I'd just like to then provide input now. I know a lot of my neighbors, so we use those, myself included, and use those first two driveways there. And with the bidirectional traffic coming, I know there's a lot of concern, particularly because even now it can be difficult for us to be able to pull in and pull out with some of the traffic speeds there. So, we'll have slightly more constrained motor vehicle traffic there with one travel lane and the addition of the bidirectional bicycle traffic. So I just want to make sure that careful consideration is given to signing in that area, in terms of, notification as appropriate for all types of traffic about the driveways, and particularly for Doty School right on that corner there. It's just it's a tough, congested area, as I'm sure you're aware.
Yes. And another thing to note too that may be helpful for the driveway access is we will be making signal phasing improvements at the intersection here too.
Great.
So the Wilson Street, both directions, they'll become separated phases now in the signal. So westbound will have green, eastbound will have a red. And then when eastbound gets a green, this right turn will also get a red signal too.
Great.
Just because we're really going to try to promote this crossing, just to make sure everybody's got a good opportunity there.
Yeah, that would be great. And I guess along those same lines, then, if you can be sure to make working actuating buttons for pedestrians. Those don't exist at this time on all four corners.
Yeah, we can certainly take a look at that. Some of it is going to be a little difficult, especially with how we plan to signalize this right turn lane, that during all times we want to have this crossing have the priority, or at least so this right turn signal is going to be a flashing yellow or a red. So when we do that, I don't think there's going to be a specific head signal there. Is that correct, Gretchen? I think I saw you were on.
Yes, that's correct.
And I am thinking more, frankly, about the, I guess, northern Broome Wilson corner that
This
right
one
now,
up here?
that doesn't have a PED signal right now. It has a button, but no signal, which is an odd combination. And then one other thing quick, you did mention that, I guess, the kind of southern, for lack of a better description, limit of the project is at John Nolan.
Yes.
Right. And I guess it is right outside of that limit, but I've had a lot of issues lately, especially with folks turning onto Broom from John Nolan and nobody stops, and being able to cross as a pedestrian right there has been and has gotten progressively more difficult. And I know it's just outside of the project limit, but if there's something, with signing just outside of the project limit that could be done there, really nobody stops at the stop sign there.
Oh, on this right turn?
Yep.
Gotcha. I think we are going to signalize that right turn.
Great.
I think Gretchen was going to maybe try to do it earlier, but I think with the project pending, we're holding off until the project was done.
Okay, I think that would be a great improvement. Thanks.
The right turn will be signalized.
Great.
Gretchen or Yang, did you have comments about that?
Yeah. Thank you, Bridget, for those good comments. Yeah, as Jim mentioned, we typically do the signing plans a little bit later because those are done by our crew in-house, not part of the bid document. So we'll definitely keep those in mind, look for opportunities to improve. So really, I think they should be, can go in hand with the others, like other ped bike improvements, signal timing improvement. It's our goal to improve the ped bike access in this area. Traditionally, as we all know, it's very tough. Hopefully, in others project, we can improve it significantly. So, yeah, thank you for the comment.
Okay, are there other comments on the project, on the geometry? Anybody? Okay, I don't see any hands. So I would need a motion to approve.
I'll move approval.
Okay, I'm sorry, who was that?
Chris.
Chris? Okay, and I see, Grant, you had your hand up as well? And Bill? Somebody want a second? Is that what your hand was up for, Grant?
Yeah, I second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Bill, did you have further comments or were you seconding? Okay. Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, we'll assume a unanimous consent approval of the resolution for the roadway geometry. Unless you prefer to vote no, if you would, please raise your hand. Or if you'd like a roll call. Okay, I don't see any hands raised, so the motion carries as unanimous consent. Thank you very much, Jim. Looks like a lot of great work has been done on that intersection. Thank you, Gretchen and everybody. Okay, next we have the BCycle annual update. Do we have those folks on, Renee?
So they were in the attendees, I think. Oh, yep, here they are now.
Okay, there they go. Okay, so we have Helen Bradley and Brian Conger. I don't know if I'm saying your names correctly there, Helen and Brian.
Yes.
Yes, you got it right.
Okay. So can you unmute yourself, or Jesse, can you unmute both of them for me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, they should have the ability.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Great. And then are we able to go ahead and share our screen with the group?
Jesse, are they registered as panelists or not?
They're in the panelists, so they should have the ability to share their screen.
Okay. Great. Well, I will pull up. We do have a presentation we'd like to show while we go through this, so I'll pull that up right now. All right. Can everyone see the PowerPoint up on the screen?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
Great.
And Brian, you're there? Okay.
Yes, can you hear me? Perfect.
Yep.
Sorry, I haven't figured out how to turn my video on, so it's probably best you don't even get to see me. So, but I know that some of you are familiar faces. So thanks so much for everybody for the time to be able to talk to you all. My name is Brian Conger, and I am the Director of Sales and Customer Service for BCycle. But I got my start with Trek as the program manager for Madison BCycle back in 2011 when we launched the program. And I'm also really happy to be joined and to introduce you to Helen Bradley, who started as our general manager for Madison BCycle earlier this summer.
Thanks for having us on this call. We just have a few slides prepared for you today. This is an agenda we shared earlier, but we'd like to just take you through a ridership update for Madison BCycle and then some new stations that we've added this year as well. And then kind of talk through community health and wellness, kind of our approach to COVID, and then kind of what's next for Madison BCycle.
Great. So I'll kick it off. It was a bit of a wake-up call for me because, having started with Madison BCycle when it launched, it's hard for me to realize that it's been 10 years already. We're in our 10th year. It's gone so quickly. And in that time, we've actually recently surpassed a pretty important milestone for our program, rolling over 1 million trips delivered to the community of Madison since launching. So really big milestone for us. We're really excited to report that 10 years into the program, we're in kind of the strongest position that we've been with very strong ridership coming off of the e-bike introduction last year and continuing to see that continued community adoption and growth in riders, both new and returning. So I'll just walk through a little bit some of the key stats of our program. And I know many of you are familiar and many of you were actually at our system launch and relaunch too. So we got our start May in 2011 with 350 bikes spread throughout town, 35 stations. That was really kind of how the program ran for a number of years. And just last June is when we fully converted the system over to pedal assist e-bikes. So those launched June 19th. And we have about 300 e-bikes and just over 40 stations throughout the Isthmus. And the photo behind is actually the launch of the e-bikes last June. Going to the next slide, you can really see we've enjoyed just a lot of positive community adoption and press since going electric. Madison BCycle was the first bike share system to fully convert its bike share fleet to electric. So I'm really happy to be leading in the micromobility realm with Madison and in our backyard here. We've just really seen a great positive adoption from our community members and from people that have been longtime riders, but also people that have been new riders of the program. If you go to the next slide, we've got a little bit more just comments. I mean, the numbers are great, but I always love just the stories behind these trips, just how this really has changed people's perspective of how they can use the bicycle and how they can use Madison BCycle to get around town and just bringing down barriers for people to using bicycles as transportation and recreation. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the next slide, this is just a stat from our annual member survey. And this was from last year's survey. So 37% of our riders have reported driving less because of BCycle. So when we think about all of the things that we aim to deliver with our program, including improved health and reduced congestion and improved environmental effects, this is really something that's important to us and helps motivate us to keep delivering community-based service. And if you look at the next slide, you can really see this shows our overall annual trips. So total trips by year since we've launched in 2011. You can see we were really running a pretty steady clip of right around 100,000 trips from 2014 to 2018. And really 2019, when we launched the e-bikes, that was really all of the difference for us. In terms of just ridership, we saw increased in trips of over 170%. And that's even with having put the e-bikes out just in mid-June. And we also got the award across all of BCycle systems for having the highest utilized bike share fleet in the country as it relates to BCycle systems with average trips per bike per day, well surpassing 5 trips per bike per day in the fall when we had students back on campus last year. So really just strong performance. And 2020, even with COVID, we have been continuing to see trips on par with where we were at last year. So we continue to expect to see the 2020 trip number to continue to grow to hopefully match and surpass where we were last year. If you look at the next slide, this shows just comparison of BCycle e-bikes relative to BCycle acoustic bikes. So this is beyond just Madison. So this data is bike utilization across a variety of different BCycle systems. We've kept the city names and not listed just to protect system privacy, but Madison BCycle is the one that's up on the top. So this data was taken from last year, whereas our acoustic bikes, as we like to call them, had average utilization of just over 1 trip per bike per day, which by BikeShare standards is pretty strong. With our e-bike system last year, we were averaging over 5 trips per bike per day, which is just incredible. And you can see that number relative to other BCycle systems is well above our peer cities as it relates to e-bike and just even classic bicycle ridership. So e-bikes in general, whether it be in Madison or whether it be in other BCycle systems, are definitely seeing much higher rates of utilization from consumers. And it's really been a positive story for BikeShare and a very positive story for Madison BCycle from our perspective. I'll let Helen take this away.
Thank you, Brian. So we wanted to kind of just show some trends and changes that have happened this year compared to even the last few years. So on the left, we included some 2019 stats. So we pulled our top 5 stations from 2019, and you'll notice most of those are in or around the downtown area. And then if you look to the right for 2020, that list has completely changed. We'll kind of touch on it again, but what we've noticed for 2020, and we assume there's a correlation with COVID and people's daily activities changing as a result of it. People are going on more recreational trips versus going, in and around downtown to businesses or to school, what have you. So we've certainly seen that fluctuation and change in trips and where people are going to. And in addition to that, we've also noticed how people are riding, how they're checking out our bikes. So in 2019, we saw a really large jump from 17% to 57% of our riders who were using the mobile app to check out our bikes. And also, members always will make up the largest, group of riders that we have. So last year they represented about 69% of riders. That was our annual members, and about 14% made up our monthly members. Casual trips are those folks that are just kind of walking up to a kiosk or downloading the app and taking their first trip, or don't ride often enough to purchase an annual membership or a monthly membership. So you'll see for 2020, again, how those have changed as well. So we've seen growth even more so towards the mobile checkout. And that number we're expecting to continue to grow with the introduction of our 3.0 docks, which we will talk about in a minute. But we've also seen a pretty big spike in annual and monthly members making up our ridership. So now we're seeing an increase in those monthly members riding with the introduction of our Madtown monthly pass, which is a $20 unlimited 60-minute ride pass. A lot of folks have taken advantage of that promo. And again, we're seeing an uptick in casual trips with people maybe using BCycle as an alternative mode of transportation to get around safely, or just wanting to get outside and ride with their families because a lot of life has changed. So people are trying to find some things to do outside these days. We're certainly seeing those numbers change. And then just some other kind of trends we've noticed. So with the correlation to COVID and people mostly working from home, who were in our heavy commuter hours of the day, trips have changed. So we used to see in 2019 and even before this that our peak ridership was from 12 to 5 p.m. during the week. We can certainly show a list of stations that those people were riding to, and most of it is, people coming from the outskirts going into downtown or to businesses to ride for work. So this year we've noticed a big change in our weekly numbers and seeing people are riding more on Saturdays and Sundays when they have free time to get out with their families, and changing those peak ridership hours from 12 to 5 now from 4 to 7, which is quite interesting. Next, we'll just share some station updates. So Brian and I were not on the last call and we couldn't recall when that was. So this may be a repeat for some of you, but starting with our newest station, we just installed at Garver feed mill. We're excited about our partnership with Garver and hopeful that the new expansion of the Capital City Trail coming in through Garver, the Garver Trail in the next year or two, will help provide more opportunities for our community to get to and from where they need to go, and working and building that partnership also with the city in conjunction with that will be fantastic for us. We added our Breeze Stevens station. So we have 2 stations at Breeze, one on the corner of East Wash and North Patterson, and one on the backside of the Breeze field on East Mifflin and North Patterson. So these are actually our new 3.0 docks that I had mentioned earlier, and we're using the Breeze Stevens location kind of as a pilot. So we're doing a lot of testing on these 3.0 docks while they're there, and it is a temporary location, so we will be removing those docks at the in the middle of December and kind of reevaluating, maybe putting those back hopefully next year. And then 2, you may have seen the Marling apartments we installed October of 2019. And then the Livingston garage kind of near Sylvie, just down the road from that, we installed earlier this summer in June. And again, unsure of when the last time we had spoken, we wanted to make sure we covered kind of our approach to COVID and keeping our bikes sanitized and safe for riders. So obviously, in addition to making sure we have a fully operating network of bikes and stations, our biggest focus has also been to provide safe transportation. So we daily we go out and sanitize the bikes, the handles, where you adjust the seat. Everything's getting sprayed down. And then we've also created these magnets you'll see on the left-hand side of that photo, so that when our techs are going out and servicing stations, whether they're swapping a battery or making sure tires are filled with air, they're documenting when they've cleaned and sanitized that station. So that's something we will continue doing for the rest of this season. And I'm assuming we'll probably also use going forward, because I think it provides a lot of reassurance for people getting on the bikes that they have been taken care of and sanitized. Okay, I'll hand it off to Brian for kind of a what's next for BCycle.
Yeah, thank you very much. So stepping back again on the BCycle side of things, Helen alluded, we are trialing our new 3.0 dock, which is pictured here in black. And I guess the feature that I want to point out about this station is there's been a lot of change in micromobility and bike share in terms of just different devices and different industry products that are available. People might have been familiar with kind of the surge of dockless bike share that kind of took the country by waves, which resulted in thousands of bikes being brought into cities, and a lot of those programs resulted in a bit of a less structure and a little bit more disorder in the public right of way. So what we found is that we really believe that docked bike share is where we as a company are focused on, and we believe that docked bike share provides order to the public right of way that we share, to the users and to the operators, in terms of providing a reliable and a convenient and orderly service and a system. So the 3.0 dock is built off of the same idea in terms of the user process as our existing stations, but the simplicity of it comes from the ability to remove the kiosks. So each one of these docks could be a standalone dock. It doesn't need to be connected to a kiosk itself. We have pictured here, at least you see one dock that's just bolted by itself, and there's others that are on an optional base plate. If anybody goes and checks out our stations at Breeze Stevens, or there's another one by the Madison Club at MLK, we just have the docks bolted directly to the concrete, and it really just makes a very minimal footprint and also opens up the configuration options. So we're really excited about that, to be able to allow us to bring bike share to potentially more locations where previously the physical space was limited to serve. And also this is a technology that would allow us to potentially bring bike share to less dense areas too. If you think about serving more neighborhoods or serving more businesses or residential areas that are maybe not in need of such a high density of bikes and docks, this is a product that allows us to do that. So we are on track for launching this product later this fall. Our plan is to launch this at scale in a program that we are going to be setting up and owning and operating in Santa Barbara, California. And we will continue to see 3.0 docks in Madison, both for testing purposes, but also for future expansion. So that is the update on that. Another product that we have that is being tested and rolled out in Madison now is our bike battery tracker. So this is a 2-part unit that goes in the bike and the kiosks with the aim of providing real-time visibility to bike battery level, both to us, the operators, so we can more efficiently manage the e-bike power, but also for the users. And that information that you kind of see in the picture there would be populated in the user-facing mobile app. So we're continuing to roll this out. We're working through a few of the test items in Madison specifically. That's why we really benefit from having Madison in our backyard. Is it provides us the proving grounds to roll out new products, test it, and improve it. So we're kind of right in the process of that with our bike battery tracker in Madison today. So excited to roll that out and continue to improve both of these products.
Great. So another just kind of vision for 2020 aside from our new products, kind of our focus for our community and where we want to go next. So we have a big focus on increasing access to our bike share. We want to include bike share as part of a normal day-to-day transit solution. Specifically, our focus now is filling in the East Wash corridor, which we've already kind of begun, and we will continue to fill in. The Park Street expansion is also on our radar, as well as renewing and increasing our footprint on the UW campus as well. 3.0 dock implementation, like Brian had mentioned, it allows for increased flexibility in a smaller station footprint. So we have the ability now to fill in those gaps within communities, businesses, neighborhoods, where a full station doesn't really make sense. And then also a focus on low-income communities where they're either a high user of public transportation or there is a lack of public transportation. We want to work with the city and some of those developers of the low-income housing projects specifically to help kind of fill that gap. And in addition to that, for driving sustainability, we've seen it this year. It's going to continue to change the way people ride, when and where. So making sure we're paying attention and filling in those gaps. Like I mentioned, the recreational destinations we've seen a huge uptick. So I don't foresee that changing the rest of this year, maybe even into the spring. So making sure we have bike stations where people are going and where they can be best utilized at parks or along the bike path. And then growing our partnerships. Of course, this is something we're always working on. But like I mentioned, residential developments and businesses, working with them to fill in station access for people in underserved neighborhoods, and those that in neighboring communities that have asked for it for the last few years. Now we have this great product, the 3.0 dock, that makes this much easier for us to actually bring to the table.
Great. And I'll just build off of what Helen said. I have the great opportunity in my role that I get to work with bike share operators in cities across the country. BCycle serves as the equipment and software provider for about 40 different bike share systems. And each one of those is unique in terms of its operation and setup. A lot of our customers are actually cities or transit agencies themselves. So we partner with organizations like Los Angeles Metro or the City of Philadelphia, other smaller transit agencies as well. And one thing that has been great about Madison and the way that we have it set up, it's unique relative to other BCycle systems. We only directly own and operate the program in Madison and in Fort Lauderdale, and we will soon do the same in Santa Barbara. But it's been a great partnership for us, and we're really happy with it. One thing that I hope that we can continue to be a part of the conversation And we have been continue to be included at the table with the quarterly working group at the city as we look at bike share as transit, just making sure that we're considering Madison BCycle as a community-based asset. In most other cities that we serve, it directly is owned and operated by the transit agency. So as transportation and transit investments and decisions are being made, it's just part of the fabric of the decision process itself. With Madison BCycle, the only downside of us being set up as a separate private business is that integration of thinking is not necessarily natural. So it's something that we always need to continue to raise the question and try and be at the table so that we can continue to partner in the best way that we can. And like BCycle does in many other communities, to really make sure it's integrated and it's part of that transportation and transit network. But stepping back, as we look at our 10-year mark coming, kind of being in that right now, that also means that we're in the process of renewing and extending our operating agreement with the city of Madison. So our current operating agreement is set to run its course by the end of this year. So we're working to extend that and to renew that operating agreement. And similarly, our University of Wisconsin-Madison partnership agreement was set to be on the same timeline as the city's agreement. So that is also coming to the end of its term, at least at the end of this year. So we're actively working with our UW partners and UW Transportation to sustain and extend that agreement as well. And that ends our formal presentation, but we do definitely want to offer time up if there's any questions or discussion. And I guess also just want to thank you for the ability to present to this group and for all the great work that you all do to make Madison such a great place to live, bike, and get around in.
Thank you very much. Bridget, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Bridget.
I am just wondering, with the increase in the recreational use and increase in the mobile check-ins that you guys are experiencing, and maybe you do this already, but might there be an opportunity to provide some information to users on maybe a little bit on the rules, but maybe also on some of the etiquette that, we might advise them to follow? Living and working downtown, I run into the BCycles all the time, and it's awesome to see people, to see them using them and out. And I think just anecdotally, it does seem like there are more folks out on the paths as opposed to, maybe just using them to get to the Capitol. And with that, I think it's a lot of folks who maybe don't bicycle a lot. And maybe could use a little bit of advice on, staying to the right and those kinds of pieces.
Definitely great points, Bridget. And user education outreach is definitely something that I know we've had a more formal communication partnership with COVID and some of the keeping your 6 feet distance. We partnered, I think, with Renee on some messaging they were really trying to promote on path ridership. And I think that's also something that we could extend to also include just general trail etiquette. I echo your observation that a lot of the people that are riding BCycles are new bicyclists, which is something I'm happy to see myself too. But at the same time, recognize there's always a bit of a learning curve, and we can play a role in helping communicate those messaging either through our mobile app, like you said, some of the notifications that we provide. There's opportunities to message. We have some restrictions on how much characters and stuff we can have, but social media is another thing that we're active in terms of trying to promote rider tips. So I think that's something we could take away as something to look into and explore.
Yeah, that'd be great. We are doing the same thing at the state level. So I think it's, it's needed all over, and now's a great time.
Okay, thanks, Bridget. Grant?
Thank you. Just real quickly, I don't know how often you're in conversations with Metro Transit, but I would just really encourage you, particularly over the next year, to be paying close attention to the network redesign study and efforts that will be going on. So there's the potential for some real changes to the transit network, and obviously including BRT. And so I think that would be a really great opportunity to make sure that you're really connected with that and thinking about the best ways to integrate bike share into a potentially newly redesigned transit system. And in addition, it might be worth having conversations with staff. I think there is some work or will be some work around thinking about different payment systems, apps, et cetera, related to transit as well. And I know there's been discussion in the past about trying to integrate between parking, transit, and I think bike share should be at the table for that as well. So if you're not already, I'd encourage you to reach out and have some conversations with transit about those items.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. We do, right now, we're on a schedule of having quarterly meetings with a kind of a group of city staffing. David Trowbridge leads that group. And when we brought up the transit conversation in our meeting just a couple of weeks ago, the current kind of path, at least, that we were working towards is, it sounds like they were going to be doing, they've got a consultant working on kind of the plan, and they thought it would make sense to go through that analysis and then bring us to the table to review and be a part of that conversation. I think probably sometime next year. We did bring up the point about RFID technology as well as mobile payment. BCycle as a national entity, we have made the investment to integrate with Transit app, which is a mobility-based transit service app that provides kind of payment options and integration with a variety of different transportation means. So BCycle is integrated with the Transit app for mobile payment, and that integration could be leveraged in Madison or some of the APIs that we have available now. We brought some of those things up too, and would definitely love to be part of those conversations, and at least are actively being talked to about and talked with about some of those changes on the horizon too.
Great, good to hear. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know, Renee or Yang, do you have any comments, Renee, with regard to that, what Bridget mentioned about rider education?
Sure, I can make a very brief comment. Obviously, I've worked a little bit with Helen and Brian on that, and especially as sort of ridership started to go up by new riders during COVID. But we, do have a Share the Path campaign that's kind of small and a little different than what we planned, but we have been doing some little pop-up signage events with bells on the path. We've had one focus group with users so far just to talk about, what they think might work with their sort of cohort. So it's definitely something that's on our radar that we're working on. And obviously we do have some signs out, especially now during COVID. We have a lot of kind of additional signage from normal, but obviously trying to look for ways to kind of grab people's attention in new ways and ways that work for different demographics, people, all kinds of bikers and different kinds of walkers. So it's definitely an ongoing issue.
Sure, especially with new riders, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the e-bikes really opened up biking for lots of people who otherwise may not be, getting on bikes. So, BCycle happened to kind of be a big player, kind of introducing the e-bikes to the community, but there are definitely lots of other individual users start to purchase e-bikes and get back to biking maybe after 30-40 years, not riding a bike anymore. So I think there's a lot of synergy between what BCycle want to achieve and also the city in general wants to achieve in terms of providing education to the relatively new riders. I think that's definitely a space that we can spend more effort on. And I'm happy to report that we are filling the vacant pedal bike education position right now, and we just got that through. So hopefully that person will work with Renee on providing some of those education, and the BCycle can be really a big partner on that. And also want to take the opportunity to thank Brian, Helen, and all others at BCycle for the collaboration with the city on bicycling. in the community. I think we are doing good work, and I think we are really leading the way on this. So hope to continue to do that. Thank you.
Great. Harold, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, just a brief observation, which may or may not tie into this previous conversation. I mean, it was really interesting for me to see how the busiest station have shifted from campus, and like now the top station is at Vilas Park and Arboretum. And I think this ties back into some of the conversations we've had about the open or shared streets program, where we talked about like, well, have they been successful? Have they been less successful? And I mean, you know, both the Arboretum and Vilas Park were those streets that actually were completely closed to motor vehicle traffic. And I have the strong suspicion that the fact that this is now the most popular BCycle station is exactly because of that, because people had this space and they feel comfortable if they're new to biking, where they don't have to navigate around cars. And even with pedestrians, I mean, there's much more space on Arboretum Drive and Vilas Park Drive than there is on the Cap City Trail. So I think that's a really interesting thing that should maybe, we should keep in mind when we think about creating these safe places for people new to biking that they can really, get started in and be safe in. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great comments. Anybody have any additional comments? Okay, well, thank you very much, Helen and Brian, for coming and sharing the update with us. Obviously, some additional ways that we can work together that have been referenced here. And we really appreciate your service to the community, and it's certainly growing and changing, as many things are with as a result of COVID. So
thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Bill, did you have one last comment before they go?
Yes, as far as our work plan, I must have missed the last time they made a presentation, or if it was, I don't remember it, but I thought this presentation was extremely beneficial to me. Mm-hmm. So do we have it in that they will come annually? Is that our plan? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you.
We're late with it because our meetings got cut from twice a month to once a month. So we pushed some things off as a result.
Yeah. Well, I found it extremely beneficial to me because I really didn't understand BCycle. So it got me up to speed. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Anything else? Okay, thanks, Helen and Brian. Okay, Chris Pedakowski, 2021 Public Works Projects.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I'm Chris Pedakowski with City Engineering, and I wanted to go through our project list for things that are under construction in 2021 and give you an idea for things that would be heading towards TC for either approval or informational purposes. So I'm gonna share my screen here. People seeing that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thanks.
Okay, great. So this was in your packet. This is our list of all of our projects. And I kind of broke them out into different categories. So this first category is the full reconstruct projects. So this is where we really replace the entire street. So the curb and gutter, the storm, sanitary and water, the gravel base, the asphalt, all gets ripped out and replaced, and sidewalk as necessary. So the first project we have is Helena, Russell, and Jennifer. This is just a local reconstruct over on the east side. We're just planning to replace as is. So right now, and let me kind of explain how I organize this, is I have the TC category here, and I have three possible things shown. One is nothing. So the idea here is it's a fairly simple reconstruct project or resurfacing that we had kind of planned to replace as is, and therefore don't propose to come to the TC with it, or for that matter, And then the other two options are a complete geometry approval, like Jim did earlier with the Wilson Street and Broome Street project. And the third possible thing is an informational item where we just come and give a brief update. If everything looks good, we move along. Otherwise, if there's some issues that come up and we have to come back, we do that kind of more informationally. So back to the list here again. For reconstructs, we're showing Helena Russell Jennifer as just a replacement. Halo Twilight also as a replacement. Starkweather Drive is already came for approval. That was part of the Garver Path project. So that is getting a geometry approval primarily because it was a pretty significant change as far as going from a two-way street with parking to a one-way street with no parking and a bike path. But that already, it will be built next year, but it is already came for approval to the committee. Dunning Jackson La Follette is a proposed informational item. And then Fadi is going to be talking about that next on the agenda, actually. So then moving to the next category, we have a rural to urban project. So these are projects where a street was annexed into the city, kind of usually on our east or far west sides, where the streets don't have curb and gutter, and we'll be reconstructing them with curb and gutter and stormwater system. So that's the kind of the rural to urban. It goes from a ditch section to a curbed section. And under these projects, we have a few listed here. Dean, Alice, Tyler, Seth, we're proposing to come for informational purposes. Hillcrest, Standish, Alden, we were proposing to just kind of replace with, not necessarily as is, but with the same widths and local streets. Pontiac, Nokomis, Rosewood, and Boston. So this one I put down as informational. Even though it's local streets, we are going to propose sidewalk on some of these projects. So, or some of these links. So I thought that would be appropriate for informational presentation to the committee. Next one is Bayview and Braxton. That is a new street that was being created with the redevelopment of the Bayview neighborhood. So proposing to bring that for informational purposes. Davies, Major, Dempsey, and Maher. Again, like Pontiac, these would potentially be candidates for some new sidewalks. So showing that as informational. We do have a Felon and Tranquility Trail, a new roundabout that we're proposing on Felon Road. Blue Harvest Lane is a new street on the very far west side of the city that the city is developing for some for new stormwater ponds and completing a street that's proposed in the neighborhood plan with that. So we're proposing the informational on that one. And then Rock Stream extension from the east end to Maple Grove Road, that was already before you informationally, and but that will be built next year. Okay, the next category is our resurfacing category. So these are kind of getting smaller in scale as we go. We have our normal chip and crack sealing and street patching. We have West Wilson from Broome to Henry. That was what was preceded me with Jim's proposal. We had that for approval. Gammon Road is it's an arterial roadway. However, it is this is really just connecting the dots between the Beltline ramp and Siebold. This is just an area of pavement replacements where we're going to just we're not even going through either intersection. It's basically just connect the dots of some pavement that is kind of left off of the current Gammon Road project. So currently showing that as not coming to the TC. We have West Washington from Broome to Bedford, 2 blocks. This would be a utility with resurfacing, so we're replacing the water, storm, and lining the sanitary. Right now, I was proposing as not coming to the TC. I guess I'd be interested in what folks think. Obviously, this is a big street, or not big street, an arterial street. However, right now we'd just be doing the resurfacing, and I believe with the BRT plan and the route restructuring plan, there's planned a bus lane on West Wash, and my thought was we would resurface this as is and remark it based on the outcomes of those studies. I guess interested on folks' thoughts on that. I don't know if you want to do those at the end or jump in between. Just stop me if you want to talk about one.
Well, why don't we go ahead and go through them and then come back, Chris? Sounds good.
Okay. East Gorham Street, this is a fairly large resurfacing project for us. So this past year, we went through and took care of all of the utility needs under the street with the project this year. So this project here is just looking at a resurface project and a few bump outs that were identified in the James Madison Park Master Plan over by the park. I'm currently showing it as approval. This is another one maybe we want to talk about. There are 2 blocks on the far north end from Ingersoll to Baldwin where there's not currently marked bike lanes. So the resurfacing project wouldn't necessarily expand the street to allow for that inclusion of those bike lanes. And that's maybe an issue I figured that might come up and be of importance for the committee. So I was showing geometry approval here, even though it's just a simple kind of 1 week resurfacing job. Old Middleton Road is a fairly long resurfacing project for us from basically Eau Claire Avenue all the way down to Capitol. This is a fairly extensive stormwater project where there's a lot of flooding issues that the stormwater utility is going to try to take care of and diminish with the project. So, and also it is I believe a collector. So I'm showing it as coming for informational purposes. This one probably be more towards the end of the season. We're thinking that it might take us the full season to get through the design and bid it maybe in the fall for construction in 2022. Again, currently showing that as informational. South Street in Wingara, this already came before you, will be built next year. There was a geometry approval as associated with the Cedar Street project. Hooker, Sheridan, Steelands, this is a more local resurface, so I was showing no TC involvement. Same with Melvin, Port, Ridgeway, Forester, and Everglade, and Carlsbad, and Cronky, Lanett, and Tanager. These are, and also Brooks, Farrenbrook College. These are local streets being proposed to resurface as is. Got a pretty long list this year, so we'll be here quite a bit. East Johnson Street, this is from 3rd to North, so this would be just east of the project we did last year. Proposing informational, informational. We got Nelson from High Crossing to Felland, again informational. These are all still in the resurfacing category again. Odana from Whitney Way to Research Park Boulevard, again, informational. Of note here, I think traffic's been looking at the needs out here and the traffic counts, and we're considering switching potentially from a 4-lane to a bike lane and one lane each direction and a 2-way left turn lane concept potentially for this stretch. So that would be coming later as informational item. And then lastly, we have some of our major streets, standalone projects. We have Park Street, West Wash to Olin Avenue and Railroad to Badger. This is the southbound lanes. We need to just do a joint repair. So that is just taking out deteriorated concrete joints and replacing those. So no proposed changes geometrically with the project. I was assuming no TC involvement in that one. Traffic calming 2021, that would be the normal traffic calming projects where we install the speed humps and such. That would be coming as a TC informational. And then lastly, a few ped bike projects. We have a Garver path for approval that'll be built next year. Actually already came to your committee for approval and was approved. Bikeways project is our resurfacing and small paths program. And we're proposing resurfacing portions of the southwest path and Pawnock Park path would be coming for informational. And 2 small path extensions of the Demetral path at 1st Street and 3rd Street. We have a number of new sidewalks as well proposed. These are little like 1 or 2 block missing link sidewalk projects where we would be installing new sidewalk where no sidewalk exists now currently, proposing to bring that informationally. And one of those new missing link projects we pulled out on its own because it's a little more complicated and detailed is in Coma Road sidewalk. This is the area by Thoreau. Is it Thoreau? Thoreau? Yes. Thoreau Middle School on Tacoma Road, where there's some missing sidewalk across the street from the school. There's going to be some interesting geometric changes to implement that sidewalk. So we decided to pull that one out and have a standalone project. So that is our list for construction in 2021. Pretty large. We'll be busy coming to you guys for various updates. I think now would probably be a good time to, if folks are thinking that we're thinking incorrectly or want to reconsider some of these decisions as far as what's informational and what's approval and what is not, or just kind of rebuilt as is.
Grant, go ahead.
Thanks, and thanks for doing this, Chris. It's very helpful, and yeah, it looks like it will be a busy year. A few questions. One on the Hillcrest Standish Eldon. Is that one that you don't anticipate a sidewalk issue with that project?
That's correct. We were not proposing sidewalk on these streets.
Okay, and you don't think that will be controversial for residents there?
I don't think so. This is kind of a we've been working in this area a few years now. This is, I think, the 3rd or 4th extension of these projects, and that's kind of how the other ones went.
Okay. For the Russell Street, will that include the crossing of the Cap City path?
It would, yeah.
So I don't think the rest of the streets are, would need to be considered, but that's one that I would like to see, particularly if there's an opportunity to pull the path alignment back away from Eastwood. I think, current thinking on those is that it's better to kind of pull it away rather than shove it up against. So that would be great if that could be considered, and maybe just that component of that project would be great to get some info on.
do you do you want us to bring that, or is that kind of the direction of the committee as a potential to pull the crossing back, or do you want us to bring back kind of a quick plan view of that?
Yeah, I obviously can't speak for everybody here, and I think it might be helpful to have just a kind of quick presentation on it in order to get feedback from the commission.
So informational is what you're thinking, Grant?
Yep.
For just the Cap City path crossing.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Okay, sounds good. No problem.
On the West Wash, I would agree, and maybe it's more of a traffic or transportation department presentation on that one, but I think we have seen some of the kind of future plans, and I think it would be good to know kind of what the options would be in terms of markings following the project. So I think whether that's you or them coming, I think that would be good for us to take a look at.
Again, informational, Grant?
Yep.
Okay.
And then the other, I think the last one was the Sheridan. How much of Sheridan is in that project?
That is from one block from Hooker to Logan.
Just one block of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that is a pretty key bike route, but if it's just one block, then it's probably not a big.
This is under the resurfacing one too. Yeah.
Okay. I think that was. Oh, and then I guess a question, and again, maybe this is more for traffic or transportation, but Park Street. I think I understand the scope of the project, but just kind of curious, if there's a plan, kind of in out years, to be working on a more in-depth kind of corridor study plan for that. Obviously, it's one of the future BRT routes as well, and it's a kind of a key arterial with no bike facilities and no good alternatives, and challenging. So just curious if there's sort of a plan in the works to kind of dig in there and tackle some of those big picture questions with Park Street corridor.
So I can jump in, and maybe Yang can follow up, but we do have this middle stretch from Olin Avenue to the railroad. That project is already that piece of pavement has already been resurfaced twice now, and it's in need of reconstruction. Versus these two segments here that I'm showing are still in decent shape, and we can salvage them by doing the joint repairs. But from Olin to the railroad, we are showing reconstruction planned, and trying to work with WISDOT to program that, since this is Route 151. And I would think, when we get that programmed, certainly we're going to have to, that's when, things can change, like curb widths and lane designations and such. So if nothing else happened besides that, certainly we'd be doing that in the future for those years. I don't know if BRT would require anything sooner, than that, but that was kind of our thinking along Park Street. So maybe, like I said, if BRT needs changes sooner, then maybe we'd be coming sooner for I don't know, study or just a presentation at least.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
Are there other comments from people? Right now, Grant is suggesting that we add to the West Washington and the Russell Street where it crosses the Cap City Trail. People's thoughts about that? That sounds like a good plan to me. Anybody think differently or opposed to that? I don't see any hands raised. So Chris, you okay with that?
Sounds good.
We'll be seeing a lot of you, Chris, huh?
Yep. We have, you can see from this list, there's a lot of projects, but we've really tried to focus our dollars on more preventative maintenance stuff. So you see a lot of those resurfacing projects, not very much in the reconstruct list. And that's to try to stretch our dollars out a little more. So there's a larger number of projects. They're a little maybe less intricate as far as the design goes, but trying to stretch our dollar out and try to make these streets last a little bit longer before they need a reconstruct.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Mm-hmm. Great. Anybody have any other comments for Chris on the 2021 projects list? Okay. And Chris, it's great to have you in our agenda setting meeting so we can talk about timing and make sure we get all your projects in that we need to. Okay. If there's not any other comments, I don't see any hands up. We're moving on to Dunning, Jackson, and La Follette, which Chris mentioned earlier. Is that Fadi who's going to do that? Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes, that would be me.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Fadi Musa with City Engineering. I'm going to share my screen and show you my plan. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, we're good. Okay, so tonight I'm going to be presenting the Dunning Street, Jackson Street, and La Follette Avenue reconstruction project. The limits of the project are La Follette Avenue, just east from Division Street to Ohio Avenue. We have Dunning Street from Atwood Avenue to the dead end on the north side, just short of the railroad. And finally, we have Jackson Street from St. Paul Avenue on the south side and to the street's dead end on the north side, also just short of the railroad. So this is a typical street reconstruction project on a residential area. With this project, we're proposing to replace the existing curb, gutter, pavement, driveway aprons, and sidewalk segments that are in poor condition. So with this project, we're not proposing to have any changes to the current geometrics. As you can see, I'm going to zoom in on Dunning Street. Basically, we are replacing the curb in the same location as the current curb. So the proposed width that we have is 30 feet on Dunning Street, 26 feet on Jackson Street, and 28 feet on La Follette. So as I mentioned, all of the streets are going to keep the same width as they are right now, except the section of Dunning Street north of the Dunning and La Follette intersection. So that would be this portion right here. So at this time, that section does not have any pavement, curb and gutter, or sidewalk. So with this project, we are proposing to have pavement installed, also curb and gutter on that street. So that street would be 26 feet wide, measured from face of curb to face of curb. Also, please note that we are not proposing any sidewalk on either side of this section. Also, with this project, we're proposing to replace all the pedestrian ramps. Right now, most of them do not meet ADA compliance, so those should be replaced and installed per those ADA guidelines. On the south side of Dunning Street at the Atwood, at Dunning and Atwood intersection, we're proposing to replace the existing pavement and pavement markings. So that would be the section that I'm showing on my plan here, that it's shown within the black line. And finally, we are proposing to have some bike sharrows on La Follette Avenue for the bicyclists that are using that as a bicycle route. So that pretty much covers the scope of the project. So last week, we held a public information meeting. So basically between 30 and 40 people attended that meeting, and some of them presented concerns in regards to high traffic speeds on Dunning and La Follette specifically. So we had traffic engineering staff there, and because of that, those concerns, traffic engineering is gonna do some studies. They're gonna be collecting data next month to see if we can install speed humps on Dunning and on La Follette Avenue. If those studies justify the installation of those speed humps, they should that plan should be presented, or is going to be presented before the TEC for review and approval. So I think that pretty much describes the plan. And that's it.
Okay, comments, questions. Harold. Whoops, I'm sorry. Grant's first, then Harold.
Oh no, I'm always talking. Let Harold go first.
Oh, you want to? Okay, Harold, go ahead.
Well then, thank you. You mentioned concerns about speeding, and I know very recently there was this crash where somebody sped their car into the Goodman Center. Where were they coming from? Do you happen to know that? Was that on Bashford or were they on St. Paul?
I haven't heard anything about that, and it was not mentioned at the PIM.
Okay, that might be something to look into. This was, I don't know, 2.5 weeks ago, and it looked very dramatic.
Okay.
So yeah, that was my only comment on like figuring out where speeding problems are, and I mean crashes are one way to tell where speeding problems occur, and this was one. So thank you.
Okay, Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was eastbound, either on St. Paul or La Follette. I'm thinking maybe St. Paul, but yeah, I guess my question was kind of to your point, Fadi, about the concerns around speed, and has there been any conversation, or do you think there might be conversation about, since we are doing a full reconstruct here and the curbs are getting replaced, but just being proposed to be replaced in the same location, is that right?
Correct.
So, you know, given this kind of great opportunity, has there been any discussion about the potential to narrow the streets, perhaps instead of speed humps as a traffic calming measure?
So I did check with traffic engineering to get their input in regards to that. So traffic engineering mentions that the best device to control high traffic speeds is a speed hump. We can look to see if reducing the width of the streets are gonna be helpful, but we haven't had that discussion. And also at the PIM, people did not mention anything about the street widths. They did mention that they wanted speed humps. So that's why we are primarily looking at that option.
So yeah, I would, I'd really like it if that were looked into and considered, and I can send some links to folks to take a look at. This is something that it's come up at Transportation Policy and Planning Board. It's something I would like to talk about at our traffic calming subgroup as well. But there are a number of cities that have really started going in this direction, and there's some pretty good evidence that street narrowing can be very effective, especially for these, you know, really low volume residential streets, really going with that kind of yield street concept. I mean, I think it's interesting with, you know, if you zoomed in a little bit on this, but, you know, the two streets where they're talking about speeding are also the two wider streets here. And so, you know, nobody mentioned speeding on Jackson, which is only 26 foot wide. You know, and I was reflecting on this in this neighborhood. I checked in Worth Court is a good example of one where I, as a person on a bike, there's nobody ever speeding there because it's so narrow. And it's it's a two-way street with parking on both sides, and it's only 24 foot curb to curb. I think South Bryan was recently redone. And again, I find it really, it's got a really good feel, and there's not speeding there. That's also 24 foot. That one's only got parking on one side. I know that in the past, the fire department has raised some concerns about narrower streets, but I think there's quite a bit of good information out there around that. And I just think given this opportunity for a full reconstruct, I'd really like to take a serious look at that. What would it mean if we brought these down, at least to 26 like Jackson, or even 24? I know I've heard some complaints from my residents in the wintertime, and they feel like it's just way too narrow, but it's kind of exactly what works to bring car speeds down, because you can't just fly through. You have to sort of navigate it. I guess I'd really ask that before kind of making a decision on speed humps, if we could really consider street narrowing with this project, because I think it could really have a positive impact on the speed concerns. And also, of course, it's just less pavement. I would expect it would be less cost, by pulling that out, and gives us more green space, wider terraces, more infiltration for stormwater. So I think that's pretty consistent with where we're trying to go. So thanks for the presentation.
Yang or Chris, did you have any comments about the narrower street?
Yeah, thank you, Alder for bringing up that idea. We have been doing some of that, and we can look more into that for these streets. I think could be a possible solution. As Alder mentioned, that we want to check with definitely the stakeholder side. The neighbors and fire department, make sure whatever solution will work for everyone. So, but we can definitely look into the possibility. Okay, thanks. Bill, go ahead.
Thanks. I'd like to second what Grant talked about as far as narrowing down Dunning. See if that's possible. But I also, instead of, if you have to resort to speed humps, which I hope you don't have to, speed tables, you might look at speed tables at a couple of the intersections instead of speed humps. So just trying to get, so it's a little bit safer for the pedestrians to get across instead of just in the mid block. Thanks.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. I think my question kind of relates to this discussion about Dunning Street, but it was, I was thinking specifically about that northern tip, the little cul-de-sac that's getting sort of done for the first time there. And you mentioned how there's no sidewalks, which is, I think, fine. But it did make me wonder if there are design cues that can be used to sort of indicate that, this is not just a road, it's also where the pedestrians are going to be walking. And I know in some cases that you can picture paint or even pavers or something, but I'm just wondering if there are cost-effective tools in the tool belt for sort of giving those design cues. I can imagine this kind of thing being helpful in other places too.
Was that for me?
I don't know who can field that one.
Okay, so we can look at that. The reason, because we're not including sidewalks on this section of line. So first, we have multiple trees here that are in good condition or safe. It's plenty of them. And that's one of the reasons why we're reducing what's going on south of the intersection. We're not proposing on 30 feet, we're proposing on 26 feet wide. And also residents on this block specifically, they reach out and we had a on-site meeting, and they, besides that they love the trees, they do not want any sidewalk. They understand that would be a massive cost, since that a new sidewalk is going to be 100% accessible to them. And
yeah, maybe I'll stop you. I think not having sidewalks is the right decision here. I was just wondering if there are design cues that you would think about applying on the street, maybe the entrance to the street or something, that just sort of indicates to folks that it is a shared space for drivers and people walking.
That's something I gotta look at. Definitely, I'm gonna look at to see if there's something that can accommodate what you're requesting.
Yang, is that something that you can comment on?
Yeah, we can work with Fadi, do some brainstorming and also look at the maybe examples from other communities to see what we can do. But generally, these are very low volume streets. So hopefully pedestrians will feel safe. But I think it's worthwhile to look into whether we can improve that.
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue here necessarily, but maybe a good opportunity to think about how that might be tackled in the future also.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay. Is that all you had, Chris? Okay, Bill?
Just to follow up what Chris was talking about, I don't advocate sidewalks for this cul-de-sac street either. But I think, in our neighborhoods, we've seen some of the streets getting pavement marks for so when they have to walk in the street for 3 foot or 5 foot, which would help narrow the lanes down, and still make it the 26 feet would work. So pavement markings in the street, take a look at it if that would suffice. But I definitely don't see sidewalks for this street.
Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. One possibility could be to just do more of a choker or neck down at that, kind of entering into that cul-de-sac as well. So I don't know what the turning movements are, but I would expect you might be able to just pull that crossing together even closer, and that would be a sort of good visual indication for cars turning in there or going into it. So that might be something to consider.
Okay, there have been a lot of great suggestions. Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, just to throw one more in there. And what you could consider is to have a continuous sidewalk going east to west, like the sidewalk would remain at the same level. And in order to get into the cul-de-sac, the street rises to really signalize this is a pedestrian route and this is just a cul-de-sac that nobody needs to get into. I'm not sure if we have done that anywhere here, but it is relatively common treatment where, you really want to signalize people in cars have to go slowly across the sidewalk, and priority is to pedestrians on the through going sidewalk. Might just be another option to consider. But I think overall, I'm not super concerned about this short cul-de-sac, which has like 4 driveways total. So it's just not going to be a whole lot of traffic, cars or pedestrian.
Okay, good suggestion. Yang, I don't know, have we tried that around here, or Fadi?
I can answer that question. We tried that at locations where the road is more like a driveway. Particularly when we have a location we want to emphasize, pedestrian right away, as Harold mentioned. So we keep the sidewalk level, through the intersection, and we just bring the driveway kind of up and down. So we actually did, quite a few that at driveways. Actually, some of the pretty busy driveways. I don't think we have done it at a street like this, but again, these would probably be lower volume than some of the driveways that we have done. So yeah, we can, for public street like this, we haven't done. I don't think we haven't done anything, but we can look into it.
Okay, Bill, you had your hand up. Did you pull it back down?
I did, but I'll just say that I like the idea of narrowing up the cross section right at the sidewalks, and if you made a speed table there, you could have the sidewalks at the same level then, or reduced level. So, and then if you do have the bulb out or choker point, then that does indicate or kind of show where there is that's not where the cars should be on that little short street then. So that's where the pedestrians could walk. Thanks.
Okay. There have been a lot of great suggestions. Does anybody have any other comments at this point? So you've heard a lot of information here. It sounds like it may potentially come back to us if there's traffic calming involved. Were you intending to bring it back with all of the additional comments that you've heard here? Fadi or Chris, I'm not sure what your thoughts are with regard to that.
Yes, so Chris, you're gonna say something?
I was just gonna say, I think we could handle all of that, all those comments, and then like Fadi said, if the speed humps are proposed, then that would definitely come back. So I think that would cover it for us.
Okay. Okay, so you're going to take into consideration all the suggestions that people have made, and if speed humps are proposed, it would come back to the TC. Any comments about that plan? I don't think I see any hands up. Okay, a lot of great suggestions and a lot of things we've been talking about at our traffic calming subcommittee. So these are always very interesting discussions. Are there any additional comments, or Fadi or Chris or Yang, did you have any additional comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay, all right, great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next we have, we can unshare the screen there. Thank you. Great. We're at item 9 on the agenda, which is an update on the traffic calming subcommittee. Bridget, Harold, Grant, Bill, and I are all members of the subcommittee, so anybody can add any additional comments. At the meeting last Thursday, we reviewed the current traffic calming programs that we have in Madison and some of the ranking systems and points. And then we spent quite a bit of time talking about traffic calming programs in other cities, which is very interesting. We have an additional meeting tomorrow, and we plan to work on our early program recommendations, which would be presented at the joint TCT-PBB meeting on September 30th. Program goals, components of a successful program, how many different programs we think there should be in Madison, whether we should have one program or more than one program. I'd just like to thank Patrick. We had asked him for a way to store all of the tons of documents that we've been receiving, and he added a traffic calming subcommittee folder in Legistar that's 62232 that's showing on your agenda. So each time we talk about it, or anytime you're looking for anything on the traffic calming subcommittee, all of the documents are in that one folder. So it's a really great way to keep track of everything. So thanks for that, Patrick. Anybody else on the subcommittee have any additional comments? we've been making a lot of progress, I think, a lot of great discussions. Okay. Announcements from the chair. I mentioned last time that all of our future meetings have been approved. We have IT resources approved for all the rest of them for 2020. I guess, geez, we're going to have to start talking about 2021 calendar, Patrick. Amazing that we're at the point where we're going to have to start thinking about that. We'll have 3 vacancies on the TC once Jessica's term expires. It was extended to September 30th. I just did get a call from the mayor's office. There's a candidate and that person's interested in talking to somebody about what you do on the Transportation Commission. So I'm going to try and catch up with them over the course of the next few days. And that is somebody who would be very helpful addition to the commission. And Bill, your term was approved for reappointment out to 2023. So we're good there. I didn't have any other announcements. Does anybody else have any announcements till I move on to future agenda items?
So thank you, Anne. I do have a quick announcement. Okay. Actually, I think many of you are aware of this already. I think, Harriet, actually, you have been a big, you and Madison Bikes has been a big partner on this. This actually is, this week is Bike Week. This for 2020. So that's a kind of a joint effort by some private entities, organizations, and the city. So it's a week-long event, and it's a very special event this year, due to COVID-19, and also kind of to commemorate that, a trip, group of Madison officials and citizens took to Europe 10 years ago, and so it's kind of 10-year anniversary for that. So just want the commission to be aware of the events going on, and also this year we kind of have a theme, asking the participants to kind of give back. We used to get bacons on a bike path, freebies, things like that. But this year, we asked folks to, for example, bike to a park, do some cleaning, things like that. Sure. So very, I think, very worthwhile, and especially, something very positive for the community, during COVID-19. So just want the commission to be aware of that.
Great, thank you. In terms of future agenda items, our next meeting is the joint meeting with the policy board on September 30th. And I asked Patrick to include just the general topics. We actually have an agenda setting meeting tomorrow morning. So we'll be talking about that. And these topics are ones that we have been telling people we were going to be talking about. So is there anything that we've missed? I mean, we only have so much time, obviously, but is there anything that we've missed that you would want us to bring up at the meeting tomorrow? I think it would be a full meeting based on what we already have. So, okay, great. I think that's all we have, and we're at, wow, just about 2 hours. I like this 2 meetings a month again. This is working out pretty nice. All right, so I need somebody to move adjournment. Harold and Bill, there we go.
So moved.
I'm sure there isn't any discussion. Unless there's any objection, we'll record a unanimous consent vote. And thanks, everybody. We've had some beautiful weather the past few days to get out walking and biking. So take advantage. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. And thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it.